All right, guys, this is Alex coming to you from Elevated Lifestyle Lab, coming to you with episode 5 today. I am writing solo with no co host. George is out for the day, but no worries, I have a great guest for you guys today. She is from her company Play with Purpose. I brought Caley with me today. Caley, how you doing?
I'm doing really well, Alex. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm glad you made time to come and talk to us today.
My pleasure.
I briefly mentioned to you how the podcast, what I was I started it for was to really help out and to just give insights to other people because I've learned so much from the podcast community.
Yeah.
I felt like, why not start my own and be able to learn some cool, different areas that I've never learned about. So I ran across your profile because our kids are in class together.
They are.
And I ran across your profile of what you do. So just give us a quick background of what you do. What's your profession?
Yeah. So I'm a child development specialist. I have a master's in early childhood special education. So a lot of what I do is I tend to branch off and specialize in behavior and challenging behavior. And I coach parents on how to work with kids, whether they're typically developing or they're differently wired. I also go into schools and I help teach social skills to kids, work with parents, work with teachers, and really try and get a holistic plan in place to really help the kid just reach their full potential, feel safe, loved, and of service in their community.
That's great. It's very interesting. The brain science part is what interests me.
Yeah.
Like I told you this last few years of diving into this type of stuff, and really with how the brain works, with neuroscience, with nutrition, with how all that goes into it. It's been super fascinating. So I've been, I wanted to do a few deep dives with you because I'm sure you can help out a lot of us parents with. You have 2 kids, right?
Yes.
How old are your kids?
Yeah, so Ethan will be 5.
5, okay.
In a week, which is 2 weeks, which is crazy to me. And then Eli is 2.
Yeah, so you got your hands full.
Yeah, and we were just talking. They're super different personalities, which keeps me on my toes. But I love it. It's the greatest.
Absolutely.
So my work definitely complements my professional work. Definitely complements my home life. For sure. Yeah.
How was it being in your profession and then having kids and trying to bring your work into play? Like, because you were doing this before you had kids, right?
Yeah. So I was a teacher, and then I did some early intervention work. So that's the service that works with kiddos who are flagged with developmental delays from birth to age 3.
Okay.
And then I helped my husband run a company for a few years, and I was the manager, worked in HR with people. And then I became a stay-at-home mom. And that was the catalyst for developing Play with Purpose and working with parents and providing mommy and me classes and educating parents about child development. Because I quickly realized if I was struggling, it was a struggle, right? That transition into parenthood is rough.
That's what I was going to ask. Even with all your educational knowledge, you really step into it. You're like, oh, no.
Because it's not just the introduction of a new person, which is profound and overwhelming in its own amazing way, but it's a rebirth of who I am as a person.
Sure, it changes you forever.
The impact is just, it's so difficult to put into words, but I went through like this identity crisis of I don't know if I can handle being so important to someone, and being the he's dependent on me for everything, for nursing, for changing, for keeping him alive. Sure. And so that's really where Play with Purpose was born, is that I had all the head knowledge, but I had to go through this heart and soul transformation. And knowing that other parents were going through this transformation but didn't have the head knowledge, I couldn't even begin to imagine how
other people would be.
Scary it feels, right? And then we come from a place of fear-based parenting. And that's just not a good feeling for a lot of us, right? Sure. And I definitely still have my fear-based moments because I'm human.
Yeah.
But I always feel so much more empowered when I'm coming from a place of understanding and empathy and love, and to be able to empower parents to do that too, to experience that is just it hasn't gotten old yet. It's just invigorating.
That's awesome. Do you find it difficult? Because the more I looked at a lot of the posts you do, the work you do, it requires, I think, the parent to do a lot of, like we had briefly talked about, a lot of inner work themselves before they can actually see that what you're talking about in their kids, and then to be able to correct them. Do you find that you're counseling the parents first before you even dive anywhere close? Because they have to do a lot of self-help per se to really.
What took a while for me to really be able to verbalize to people is most of the time people come to me with, I need help, fix my kid.
Right, that's what you would think. Yeah. He's crying too much. Fix him.
Okay. and then it becomes a conversation of, well, we need to talk first. And then that's when I really start to uncover what's really going on, because there's different environmental triggers and different supports that we can put into place for kids. But the self-work, that is such an important piece, because I teach a lot about how the child's brain is immature and the connections aren't all there, and the prefrontal cortex doesn't fully develop until age 24, and that's when impulse control and emotional regulation, so all that stuff, right? So using the brain science to empathize and understand where our kids are developmentally and what are appropriate expectations. But also it's really important to understand that while we do have fully functioning brains, our wiring can be faulty. And the wiring can be faulty due to trauma. And it could be a big T trauma, like the hurricane that hit the Bahamas, Dorian. Those people experience profound trauma. Or it could be neglect. As a child, it's the ACEs study really shed light on what kind of trauma. Up to 70%. 70% of us are walking around and have experienced trauma.
Yeah, that's wild.
And trauma rewires the brain.
Sure.
100%. So validating parents and saying, look, I know you don't want to scream at your kid. You get to a point where it's uncontrollable and you're not crazy. There's something in your brain. So we talk a lot about that too. I spend a lot of time about that hanging out there to help them understand.
Do you find that it comes a lot from how they were parented? Because I feel like since... especially me I have a 4-year-old and 18-month-year-old, so this is all pretty new to me as well.
You're in it.
Yeah, I'm in it just like you. Yeah, it's getting the full experience.
Yeah.
And I feel like jumping into it without reading many books or ever being a parent before, I've kind of just relied on how I was parented. But as I became a parent and I started doing what I, just naturally instinct was doing, realized this isn't the best way to raise your voice or to, to just do maybe stuff that my parents would do to me. Right. And now that I'm doing a lot of self-help and realizing how the brain works and how you ask questions to get an answer, but you might not be doing that correctly. And like the whole thing you do, I feel like you see that a lot, that it just comes, that's mainly the area, right?
And I found that sharing what I struggle with, my past and my scripts that I have, we all have scripts in our head. We all tell ourselves stories. And a lot of the stories we write and the scripts that we have are based on our family of origin, our background knowledge, right? That's the most powerful influence in our early years for most of us. Either the presence of them or the absence of them. Just because you weren't around, that has a profound effect as well. So we have scripts, and a lot of times, one of the first things we talk to parents about is quit taking it personally. Your child's behavior is not about you. Because as parents, in our head, a lot of times we hear, he can't disrespect me like that. Or he doesn't appreciate anything. He's so ungrateful. I work all day, and I catch myself as a mom thinking this, I drove him around all day. We have a play date with friends, and then I have to come home and cook him dinner, and he's whining about me not getting him water fast enough. That feels so personal. It feels like a personal attack. And in my head, what I'm building in and what I help other parents build in is reframing that and saying, he doesn't have the capacity for delayed gratification. That's the missing skill right now. So instead of snapping and saying, don't talk to me like that, which is exactly how
we want to act.
I was spoken to, so that's exactly how I want to speak to him.
Sure.
It's like, oh, you really want water. I'm going to get it. No, I want it now. Wow, waiting's really hard.
It's so hard to...
It's so hard to do it, but that takes a lot of self-work for us to understand that we're telling us a story about what's going on, and it's not actually what's going on.
Yeah. It's so tough because I find myself like being more of a relaxed, laid back type of person. Yeah. When I had my first son, I thought I never really get stressed out. Like I never freaked out. Like, and 6 months into it, I'm like pulling my hair out. Yep. I was completely lost. I'm just like, and like you said, that's when I had to take a step back. And it's like, it's not this 6-month-old's fault that's doing anything wrong. It's something that I'm thinking, like you said, I'm playing some kind of script in my head and just totally freaking out. But I'm sure a lot of parents feel that, especially the first 6 months.
And we need to talk about this. Yeah. Like I had, several moms this week break down and say, no one's ever validated that before. You validated it.
Yeah.
And my message to them is like, well, look, I talk to 5 of you in a day, and you've all said the same thing. Like, we're all experiencing it together. We need to talk about it.
Yeah.
And we need to have conversations about ourselves, not about our kids.
Oh, that's helpful.
You know, what are we struggling with?
Yeah.
Because when we make it about our kids, we're deflecting responsibility.
That's interesting. Yeah. I like that, yeah.
Personal responsibility is a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes you don't want to look like, no, it's not my fault. I didn't do that.
No, it's much easier. Well, fix them, right?
Yeah, right.
They're the problem.
And how is it with, I know at this age, I was reading one of your posts about them mirroring exactly what they're seeing. And I find myself more and more when I hear a lot, like if you find yourself being jealous in general, just in daily life, you find yourself being jealous of someone or something you don't like, it's probably because you're seeing yourself in that person. So I kind of bring that back to my son. If I see him like tapping on the table, or like this fork on the table, or beating on his knee, or slapping, and I get upset, but then when I kind of rewind the tape, like I was doing that 15 minutes, it was me doing the same thing. It was me doing crazy noises, being a ninja, and now he's doing it, and I'm getting frustrated.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about this mirroring stage that they're in. I mean, they just soak everything up.
Okay, so the mirroring stage. So there's so much in what you just said. Like we could go into
several different ways. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're asking about the modeling learning. So we are social creatures. And what's really interesting, I think it was in the 90s, a scientist went in and they found mirror neurons in monkeys. Forget apes. And what that means, and it's survival. So if one person gets worried or moves, we're all going to follow that person. They sense a threat we need to follow. So this is mirror neurons in our brain are what, if I yawn, you're going to yawn, and the yawn goes, right? It goes across. Those are mirror neurons, and it's not conscious. And so that was really proof that we are wired to learn through social modeling. We're social creatures. Now, if there's, we've discovered with neurodiversity, with like autism, it doesn't quite work the same. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, if kids are neurotypical, they're going to learn through modeling. And so I think when I said I changed the conversation have the conversation about you and adults,
right,
is because if we want to change our child, we have to change ourselves first. Yeah, we have to be the change. So I realized one day that my son got snippy with my husband and spoke to him in a disrespectful tone. And I really didn't like it. And I said, oh, I do that. I have an aggressive, right? Most of us have a default of aggressive or passive personality, and I have more of an aggressive personality. And when I'm stressed, so when I'm pregnant, hormonal, postpartum, which I was for like 3 years, well, he was alive, I am more likely to speak that way. And so I really had to first work on changing my tone of voice, even under stress, so that he didn't hear it. It's not right. Well, why should I be able to speak to daddy like that and he can't?
Yeah.
So again, that comes back to personal responsibility, really modeling what we want to see. And I love that example you use about your son tapping on the table and you're like, oh, well, I was doing that. Because how sweet is that too? And this is a part of the overwhelm. They want to be just like that.
Oh, yes.
So one of, and I can't credit the person, I can't think of it, but one of the mantras that I just sticks in my head is be the person you want your child to become.
Yeah, I like that.
And so I am constantly striving on a daily basis to better myself because my goal is for my child to always want to better himself so he can be a better person than I am.
Right.
Right? Because I think that's how we impact the world.
Sure.
And we create change that is so desperately needed.
Yeah,
right now.
absolutely. It's the more and more I look into the self-help kind of genre and the whole maybe problems in the world or whatever could be fixed, I find it's just a never-ending. It needs some help. Yeah, it starts with you and getting your message out there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So I was reading I think it was an older post you might have made, but about your son having a meltdown and how your self-talk kind of made you sane. But I'm sure a lot of parents go through this, and sometimes it's, it just gets, especially when you're out in public. I feel at home, put him in his room, you can go outside, walk your dog, you kind of get away. Right. But if you're in the middle of a public store and he's on the ground kicking and screaming, I mean, what's some tricks, some ways? I mean, I know each situation's a little different, but.
Yeah, so I'm trying to remember which post, because there's been a few posts about his meltdowns.
This one was the dentist. He went to the dentist too early, like first dentist visit, and he had woke up early and went to the dentist. And then.
Okay, so public, I don't even remember. I posted one about Target too. He had a really epic meltdown in Target a few weeks ago. It was fairly recently. Anyway, so the first thing to understand about kids' meltdowns, and there's really a difference between meltdowns and tantrums. Okay, meltdowns are typically sensory overload. There's something physiological, like low blood sugar meltdowns, a big release after an overstimulating event, like a birthday party or school or traveling a long day, whatever it might be. And so when kids go into this fight or flight mode, where there's no talking, there's just screaming, there's usually aggression, right? Talking makes it worse. Us talking to them. Yeah. So typically what I see when I do observations, when kids get into this state or when they're on the edge of this state, they're spiraling, right? They're on the edge. As parents trying to reason with them. And there is no way that think of when you're in that state, when you're panicky, when you're scared, when your adrenaline is pumping and you're going into that fight or flight mode. If someone were to try and reason with you, you're probably going to try and punch them.
Yeah, get out of my way.
Right? Yeah. I mean, because your body is telling you to protect yourself or run away right now. And reason and logic is trying to activate a totally different part of the brain that is going offline. It is gone. So our job as parents is we've got to move them up through their brain states. We've got to help them feel safe first. How do we help a kid feel safe? Well, we probably need to get them out of everybody's line of vision. So I'll give you an example. Ethan actually had a meltdown, and it happened to be the day before he got sick. Mm. So this is so rare now. I mean, he's almost 5, so it's so rare for him to have big meltdowns, especially out in public now. Yeah. Because that part of his brain is coming online. Hallelujah. So it's a little more regulated, but he was on the verge of getting sick. It was like, we needed to just do this one last errand, punch it out. I thought it was going to be quick. It was never quick. Never quick. Right? And total epic. Like, we literally were in the dollar section at Target, which if you go to Target a lot, like I do, like you get the cart and you literally walk right into the dollar section. Yeah. You're not even on an aisle in the store. And he full on, like, hitting me, flailing, trying to climb out of the cart to run away. I mean, he is full on in fight or flight, right? Not words, hitting, trying to run away. Luckily, my husband was with me. It was a Saturday, so there were lots of people around to witness this. It was great. So the first thing I tell parents is, like, stop caring what other people think.
Yeah, you have to.
Your first responsibility is to your child. Yeah. Right? And that's who you focus on. And anybody making comments, anybody looking, first of all, most of the people, especially in a place like Target, they have kids. They're gonna, like, we've all been there, okay? And if anybody's judging you, it's their business, not yours.
Sure.
Right?
More pressing matters.
It's none of your business. My mom used to say, it's none of your business what other people think about you.
Yeah.
And I love that. So I picked him up. My husband was there, luckily, so he could stay with our 2-year-old. And I picked him up flailing, and he's a heavy dude. I tell him that's why I work out. I have to be strong, period. And I walked outside a Target, and I said, we're just going to sit here. And, well, then he started trying to run away from me, and we were in parking lot.
Oh, no.
So then I said, okay, we're going to go to the car. No, I don't want to go to the car, right? I'm like, I know you don't want to go to the car. I get it. We need to go to the car to be safe. And so in a meltdown like that, what I try and impress upon parents is when kids are out of control, they don't feel safe. They subconsciously understand they're out of control of their body, and they need someone to step in and keep them safe. And so if you're going to say anything to your child during a meltdown, it's, I've got you. You're safe. I will keep you safe.
Interesting.
They need to hear the word safe.
Yeah.
Safe actually activates a physiological response in our brain. So
I feel like no parents are saying you're safe right now. They're like, shut the hell up. And,
I told you, no cookie, or you're not going to get a toy now.
No candy now, yeah.
We instantly start doling out the consequences. What does that do? It escalates the situation.
It does, because then they're like, no, but I really want Paw Patrol.
Right, and then they go, no, look at you, you're acting this way. Or, well, get it together, stop crying. And, I mean, it's like, holy smokes, right? The kid is just, their brain is short wiring at that point.
Yeah.
So, walked him out. The tantrum literally at that point, once we were in the car, lasted 2 minutes.
Yeah. You pulled him out of the element where he felt maybe uncomfortable, maybe. Threatened, yeah.
Right? And then it was like, bud, I'm just going to text daddy. It's time to go home. Like, at that point, it was like, what am I doing?
Sure.
And then he was like, no, I want to go in. And I said, I don't really think it's safe for you to go in. You were trying to run away. Because at this point now he's talking. He's coming out of it. He wants to feel connected to me. And so I was able to talk with him a little bit. And then when kids are in that state, that emotional state, we can give them 2 choices. And say, all right, I think he was freaking out because he didn't want to be in the cart.
Yeah. And
I said, all right, well, your choice is you can sit in the cart with your brother. I think that was the big trigger. Or we can get your own cart, and I can push you, and daddy can push your brother. And I forget what he picked, but we need to get him shoes. And we picked out shoes, and then we were able to leave. Yeah. But I think the biggest message for parents when kids are in that state and they're melting down is understand that you're not going to teach them anything. So any limit setting or any consequences you give them in that moment are going to be ineffective and probably make it worse.
I've learned that the hard way. I think.
Yeah. What they need in that moment is for you to be the anchor for them in the storm, for you to ground them in that storm, help them feel safe, get them through that. I posted something about riding the wave.
Yeah.
And waiting for that release. Because it is such a powerful wave in their body. And waiting for that release, it'll come.
Yeah.
And then when the tantrum breaks, right, when the wave recedes, we actually get a huge hit of oxytocin in our brain. Yeah. So that's why little kids, after they tantrum, they'll usually come up to you and say, Daddy, hold me. Daddy, hold me, right? Because they've got this surge of oxytocin. They need us to pick them up and love on them, which can be hard to do if you've been triggered.
Sure.
Right? So, but knowing then that's the time to reconnect with them. And then when they're calm again, then you can go back. You can reinstate the limit. You can help them reflect on what went wrong. You can walk them through the consequence. That's the time to do it.
Yeah, I've learned that so many times the hard way of trying to negotiate with,
a terrorist.
If he's holding my phone and he starts crying, or I'll take my phone away, but then that just escalates the situation, or a million different examples like that. Yeah. But it's like, oh, why did I do that? But it helps to know that, like you said, to take a step back and know how to communicate to the child, because it's. One of the posts I mentioned to you the other day that I saw in yours that really hit home with me is speaking about like crying, whining, tantrums and stuff, was the one that it says crying, whining, complaining are not misbehaviors. They are expressions of disappointment, discomfort, and dysregulation. And when you look at, I mean, for me, that's like my new word I'm using this year is like a paradigm shift. You know, it's
Oh yeah.
it just really puts it in perspective as like you're saying, he's in a tantrum or a meltdown for a reason. He's not misbehaving, but he is discomfort. He's not comfortable. He doesn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And when you kind of backdoor that and you look at it the other way, I feel like it's super powerful. Yeah, I love that. When I read the post, I'm like, yeah, that hits home. And so many people, I don't think they, especially with the crying and whining, because people look at it so much as you're just crying, you're misbehaving, you're over there crying because you can't get
quit whining
because you can't get a sticker or
and
but if you take a step back and you look at it, it really.
So the power of this comes in the simple, basic human need of needing to feel seen, heard, and understood. And because we are socially wired animals, which we talked about, we have an innate need, really it's a need in our brain, to feel understood by the people who mean the most to us, by our tribe, right? So when children start whining can be a constipated tantrum. It's like the best analogy I've heard from it, right? They just need to get it out, right? So they're like a stopped up tea kettle at that point. They're just waiting to blow up. Or it can be they just don't feel seen. And so when instantly we go in and say, well, it wasn't your turn. You grabbed the toy out of her hand and now she gets it back and you don't get a turn, right? But Mommy, I really wanted it. It's not fair. Right?
Yeah.
Wow, you really wanted that toy, and she's playing with it. It's magic. And it's not really magic, it's brain science, right? But it works, and it blows parents away. And then from there, then you have a connected child who is more likely to cooperate with you because they feel connected to you. Right. If they feel seen, heard, and understood.
Sure.
So sorry.
No, it's okay. Talking so much gets you a little raspy.
Got my kids cold.
No.
On top of everything. It's all good.
So I saw that you do. What's some of the benefits? I know you make like a weekly chart for your son. With you made a video. You put Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You put different pictures of the activities throughout the week. How does that kind of help? Tell me a little bit about that. Does it help him with being excited for each day, or what's the benefits of doing that?
Yeah. So visual supports are something that were first introduced to me when I worked with kids on the spectrum, and then I really started understanding that all children can benefit from these visual structures. So whether it be a visual schedule, which is the one I posted like a weekly, because he doesn't go to school 5 days a week, and he loves school. So it's Mommy hanging on a little bit. He's not in 5 days a week. Yeah. But, and then we're Disney pass holders. So in the spring we go to Disney a lot. Mm-hmm. And so it just helps him know, and it helps him feel empowered. Okay, today is a school day. Today we're going to the Turtle Center. Tomorrow's another school, whatever it is, right? And we do after school activities sometimes, or are we coming home? And so for him, that just helps him understand what's happening next. And what that does is it's a safety support for kids, because we all know, or we all want to know expectations. We all want to know what am I supposed to be doing? What am I doing today? Wait, there's safety in that.
Sure.
So the picture schedules or the visual schedules that hang on the wall are great. But what I've really, and I love the calendar idea too for, that age group, like 4 or 5, because they are learning the concept of time, and time is a really difficult, it's very abstract.
Yeah, my son's been asking, so the last 3-4 months, I'm like, it's going to be 20 minutes. Is that a long time? How long is that? Is that 1 week? He's trying to get it.
Well, and think of how many increments of time we have. Like Ethan, so his birthday is coming up, right? So we were driving today after school, and he goes, Mommy, how many years until my birthday? And I was like, And then we're going to go to Disney. And he goes, how many weeks are we going to go and, be at Disney? And I'm like, we're not going for weeks, first of all. That's insane. But, we have so many different words to delineate different time periods.
Yeah.
And time is super abstract. Right? It's a quantity that we just like humans decided to make up, but right, to pass the days. So it's really difficult for kids to understand, and they feel really out of control because dad's the one that dictates 20 more minutes. Sure. Or mom and dad are the keeper of the schedule. I don't know what's going on. So giving them that structure and ability to look. And then I tell parents, I'm like, if there's any kind of routine in the day that's particularly difficult. So typically that's morning routine and evening routine. Making I really like the books, making a little visual book. Because what kids can do, our right side of the brain has the visual part of the brain, and that develops faster. So pictures speak kids' language. They can sit down, they can process the routine, they can understand it. I use actual pictures of the kids themselves doing it, like walking into school, getting in the car, whatever it might be, because kids love looking at themselves and they can see themselves doing it. So they're like, oh, I am capable of getting into my car seat by myself. I mean, it's empowering for them to see that.
Sure.
And then it becomes objective too. Well, what does the book say we do next?
Yeah.
Right? And again, you're able to shift a little bit of that personal responsibility onto them when it's age appropriate. Yeah. So I love using visual supports. And when I've had a few clients right now whose parents travel a lot for work, or divorce situations where, they share time with the kid. So let's make a visual schedule. What are daddy days? What are mommy days? How many sleeps is daddy going to be gone? And it just helps soothe that anxiety. Little anxiety in them.
Yeah, a little bit.
That worry. Yeah.
I've been trying to we'll let them watch a tablet or do the paintings on the tablet. So I've been setting the timer. Like you get 10 minutes on the timer. So I show them how to set the timer now to try and get them to relate like what maybe 10 minutes is. Yeah. So he can see it, and then it starts going off the alarm. And then I'll see him like try to turn it off. Like, no, Daddy doesn't see the timer. He's going to keep going.
So pro tip, there are visual timers out there for kids.
Okay.
And you can buy...
Like that sit in the screen, or no, like a
you
timer? You can.
Timer? So there's two different versions. So there's they have apps. You visual timer app search, and they have them for kids where like an animal, like an alligator, gets uncovered as the time passes. Oh. So in 10 minutes, the alligator is completely uncovered, so they can see time passing. Oh. So that's a version on a device.
Right.
And then for teaching, I have what's called a time timer, and it has a little arm, and you swing it around the clock face, and it blocks off red, and as the red disappears, that's your time disappearing. Oh, okay. So I'll set it for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever. It's great. It's a really great tool just to help kids prepare for the transition. And as they get older, our kids are still a little young, but as they get older, being able to manage their own time.
Sure.
Helps me when I'm teaching. It helps me manage my own time.
Yeah. We need it too.
Yeah,
for sure.
Great. So
tell me a little bit about, you had mentioned morning routines and evening routines, and as I know with similar age groups, sometimes those could be the worst times and the best times of the day. Tell me, for example, I guess we'll start with the evening routine, because our little 4-year-old is still in bed with us, because when he was younger, he got sick, and he's just kind of stayed in the bed since then. So trying to get him to go to bed before us, because he's in bed with us, is nearly impossible. And maybe you have any tricks to transition him back into his room. We've tried fish tanks, space rooms, blacklight stuff, bunk beds, a new puppy.
I'll come sleep in his room.
Yeah, I know, right?
You'll stay in your room. I'll come sleep in his room. It sounds awesome.
I know.
Yeah. Oh, that's hard.
Yeah.
So, nighttime is tricky. And what I would say, especially for a kiddo who, I don't know what the what kind of sickness or whatever it was.
Just like a cold, like a gestal. It wasn't like anything super, but enough to where we weren't going to get up every 30 minutes to go check on him, so just pulled him in.
So what I would suggest is when kids are really comfortable in their parents' bed, and you don't want to go cold turkey, you know, because every parent has a different threshold for what they're comfortable with. Sometimes just putting them on the floor and making them a floor bed next to you so they're still in the room, and then transitioning them from there and getting them more comfortable, because what that really is that that's feeling safe by themselves. And he might not know necessarily, right? And he's getting to an age now where he's around 4 or 5. They do get really way more independent than I'm willing to admit.
It goes fast.
You know, it goes super fast. And there's a big shift from that 4 to 5.
Yeah.
Developmentally and all the things. So, you know, slowly weaning him off of that and maybe just putting him in the floor bed.
Yeah.
So he's next to you.
Right.
And because I don't like sleeping with my kids.
I know. We have a king size, but it makes it feel like it's a twin, you know.
You need 2 king size beds.
Yeah.
And he's in the middle. I know.
And then he's fine if we go, like, if I go with him to his bed and read a book, but the problem is, once I hit the pillow, I'm snoring and he's up walking around because I can't even. He'll outlast me. But if he'll fall asleep there, I can go back. But he's back in the bed by 3 or 4 in the morning.
Yeah, you can start with the floor bed, or and you can make a book.
Yeah.
You know, about sleeping in his own bed. Sometimes just letting it be their own decision.
Yeah. I feel like the independence is going to kick in soon because he's getting. You know, big boy, he's got big muscles, he's got, you know, he's independent, you know, I feel like he's getting there slowly.
It's hard. It's hard. And nighttime, a lot of the struggle is, I think it's important to keep in mind that nighttime is really the longest period of time our kids are disconnected from us. You know, if they're in their own room. So there can be a lot of fear, and fear is developmentally based too. So kids go through different ages and stages with fear. So depending on the age of the child, the key when kids express concern or fear or worry is not to minimize that.
Right.
There aren't any monsters in your room. That's make-believe. Because to children, they don't have a defined line between fantasy and reality.
Not till what, like age 7 is when they like lose that cool imagination or whatever. I'm not sure what part of the brain that is, but
it's so and so in age 5 and 6 and stuff, 4, 5, 6, depending on the child, there's this blurred line, and it's really hard for them to understand that this is real and this is pretend. And so I have a child who's really super sensitive to that kind of stuff.
Monsters and boogeyman and stuff,
And we were at Hollywood Studios, and Hollywood Studios has, it's the Star Wars. It's where the new Star Wars park. And so they have, I think it feels like every 30 minutes. It might be every hour or less, but it feels like they do it all the time, is they do the Darth Vader march with all the stormtroopers.
Yeah.
The sheer terror that my child experiences when those stormtroopers, and here I am, I'm like, this is as real as it gets.
Yeah, it's like the real guys walking out,
You know? And so I'm like, how do we, and so we hear the Darth Vader, like, march music, I'm like, oh my God, duck behind here, you know? Because it's just not even worth trying to reason with him at that point.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Tell him you're safe.
Yeah, that's what I'm
all
like.
You can do, yeah.
And I'll try and say, I'm like, but they're guys with costumes on.
Yeah.
You know, there's real, like, daddies in there and mommies in there, and they just have costumes on.
Yeah.
You know, you're safe. Mommy and daddy are here. But he's still looking. He's like, well, there's only 2 of you, and there's, like, 30 of them. And, you know, so he knows I'm bluffing a little. No.
Yeah. Same with, on Halloween, same with Sebastian. We had a party we went to. They had, like, a mini haunted house thing, and they had, like, 3 or 4 characters that looked, like, really cool / scary.
Nope.
And he went one loop in there, and he's like, I don't want to go back in there. I don't want to go back.
And that brings up a really good point, your Halloween point of there's so much stuff we don't even, as parents, as adults, we don't even really think about, we might not even be aware of, but there's so much weird, like, stuff that happens around the holidays. Santa being one of them.
Tell me more.
And I'm glad to have a platform for this, because I'm gonna post something about it, but one of the things that really hurts my heart is when I see children who are screaming and terrified, like the funny Santa, quote unquote, funny Santa pictures, where the kid is screaming in terror, reaching out for a parent.
Yeah, we had one of those pictures.
And Santa, and I'm like, oh my, I mean, it is like an instinctual, guttural, like, don't. If your kid is that afraid,
just don't even.
Just don't.
Yeah.
You know, like my kid one year, he was only willing, he went up to Santa on the other side of the barricade and waved.
Aww.
And I was like, do you want to say hi? And he's like, hi. And I said, do you want to go sit on his lap? He's like, nope. Okay, we'll keep walking.
Yeah, we'll come back there next year.
Yeah, so maybe this year, but probably not.
Yeah.
But I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But, you know, understanding that these things, Halloween,
characters of some sort. Yeah.
We do all these special things. Kids are confused a lot of times. They don't necessarily, and that confusion feels unsafe. So there's fear, and we express fear with aggressive actions. That can be aggressive tone. It can be a short fuse. It can, I mean, you know.
Yeah.
So I stay busy this time of year.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I got an email. They're doing Santa's welcoming party at the mall this year.
Oh,
so we do the whole Elfie thing. So Elfie comes and stays at our house for the month of December. So I came up with, or me and my wife decided yesterday, because we're going to go tomorrow to see Santa. So we wanted to like play.
Is he coming tomorrow?
Tomorrow to the Gardens Mall.
Wow.
So that's 6:30, I think. So you're walking around, and I know it's super early.
Yeah.
So we printed off a letter from Elfie. We put Elfie's picture, and they said, you know, Sebastian, all three of the dog and the two kids, you know, this is Elfie. I'll be there soon. Santa's coming to collect Christmas lists, but we're just trying to get him engaged and trying for him to really soak it up, because I think at this age he's really like. Understanding, like Halloween, he had a blast. He loves Easter.
Golden age,
everything.
Man.
Yeah.
This is the golden age. This is like prime time. Yeah, awesome.
Definitely.
Awesome.
So do you, for the just the last thing on the nightly routine, do you have like a set time, like by 7:00 everything's off and you're getting that down, or you kind of just?
Oh yeah, my kids go to bed so early it's not even funny.
You're so lucky.
I am not I'm not an evening person. No.
Especially with time change, it's like. It feels like 10, but it's 5.
I need my kids to go to bed early. So, yeah, by 6:30, we're starting the bedtime routine.
Wow.
And by 7:00, we're out of their rooms.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't mess around with bedtime.
Yeah, that's crazy. Even when the sun's up, like when it's not dark till 9:00. Yeah.
Blackout shades. Blackout.
Yeah.
You know, and maybe this spring they'll be a little bit earlier. I might let them bump it to 7:30, but no, it's great.
Wow.
But yeah, so we do have a routine, and a lot of times, so my husband works outside of the house most often, and so when he comes home, like he does bath. We all sit together at the table, and then he moves them in the bath, and then we read stories together, and then I generally take the 2-year-old in his room and rock him. He's still in his crib for as long as I can keep him in there.
I know.
So, and I put him down, and my husband lays with our big kid for a while.
You guys read books, both of them?
Yeah. Yeah, Eli's just getting to the age where he can like sit and read a few books. He likes it.
Yeah, starting to come around to it.
Yeah.
So what about the morning routines? Is it kind of chaos, or they get up super early, or you have to wake up? They're out?
Well, Eli sleeps like a normal person. Ethan, it sounds a lot like your son, but in reverse.
Yeah.
He is the kid that's like, for a while, he was waking up at 4:30. And I tried everything. I tried moving bedtime up and back, and nothing worked. So when you've tried everything, try nothing and just
see what
accept
happens.
it. So he usually wakes up between 5:30 and 6.
Okay.
And he's getting a little better about staying in his own room and entertaining himself to not wake us up. Because I rarely can sleep until 6, but if I can, I like to.
Yeah.
If I wake up early, I like to not have to be mom. I work really well. I actually write. I prefer to write in the morning.
Yeah.
So anyway, they play. I think play is really important for my boys, and they spend a lot of time in the morning playing.
That's good. My son's always asking, I want to play with the dog or with his sister or whatever.
I don't let them go outside and play a lot in the morning because it's so hard to get them back in.
Yeah.
But if we have if they're not in school, they can do that.
Yeah.
But
you have any animals? Any dogs?
Two big dogs.
Two big dogs. How they do with the kiddos?
Two big dogs.
Yeah.
They are wonderful.
Are they?
They are saints.
Oh.
I do keep them separate. I'm not a big fan. I've had some people ask me, well, what do you do when the kid, keeps pulling on the dog's tail I'm like, I don't mess around with animals and kids because they both are so instinctual and reactive.
Mm-hmm.
So even the best dog, I mean, we've had this puppy, we got him 2 years ago. He's never so much as snarled at the child. And, it's not a fair expectation of the kids pulling the dog's tail for the dog to not at some point
Ever
snap.
React, yeah.
So I'm big on keeping them separate unless I'm facilitating the interaction.
Well, I'm sure because they're bigger, they can just knock over the littlest one, like, no problem, right?
And that's a problem. The puppy, he's 2, but he is still, he's a hot mess. He has knocked over Eli a couple times.
Yeah, we just got a puppy, and it's only a 6-pound puppy, but she knocks over the 18 months. You'll just hop up and just,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard. Puppies and babies. I don't know why I thought that was a good idea.
That's what I'm saying now. We got a puppy, I think, it's been a month now, but it's our third baby.
Yeah.
So I'm up at 2 o'clock with a walker and it's just like another baby.
Yeah.
She's good. Our kids are super in love with her. My youngest, Isabella, I think she's almost 18 months now. Before any animal, any dog, cat, anything, she would just, like you were saying with Santa, just cry and freak out and grab onto you no, don't get me close. So we were kind of wondering how she would be, but she's so sweet with her. She's doing what you're saying, pulling the tail or trying to squeeze her so hard, trying to go. But it's so fun. It's cool.
That's so fun.
It's good to see them have that type of relationship, and it gives them a playing partner. When I don't want to run around the couch and play catch, they have the doggy. Just go play with the doggy.
Is she gonna get bigger?
It's a mini golden doodle, so probably gonna get 10 to 12 pounds. Not too big. It's a little baby. We didn't want to get too big.
That's awesome. They're not 70-pound mutts like mine.
Yeah, we got lucky with it because it's, I guess, with the golden retriever part, she doesn't shed at all, so no hair. So that was a big plus for me at least. No hair.
Yeah.
So what about nutrition for your kids? Because that's always an issue as far as what they like to eat. Do you play games to incentivize? Because with my son, I've created this whole either different names for foods to help. For example, I've talked about it on this podcast a lot, but when he was 2 years old or any years old, he's always liked donuts. So instead of giving him a donut, I created apple donuts. So I just cut the apple into donut and core it, and ever since then he's loved apple donuts. And then try to play something different with broccoli or with, and I do a lot of mud races and long distance races. So I'm trying to share my experience and with healthy food and a lot of sugar and all this stuff. How are you with your kids? Because it's like a constant moving game, right? It's
yeah, and I think keeping the conversation around food light is really important. So I love the idea of being playful with it. I do think for kids, exploring food, they're wired to be little explorers, so exploring food is really important. And when we introduce a new food, the goal isn't for them to eat it, it's to explore it. And it can take upward, I think the minimum is 7 times. It can take even more times for them to accept it as a new food.
Oh, really? I want that potato.
Yeah.
Instead of I don't know.
Parents will put, broccoli in front of their kid down and they refuse it, once and then, I don't like broccoli. Or then it turns into a power struggle. You have to eat your broccoli before you can have whatever.
Right.
Ice cream. And those power struggles around food do not create healthy eating habits.
No.
They just don't. So I think keeping the conversation around food light and matter of fact is really important. And in our house, we practice the division of responsibility. So I choose what goes on your plate and you choose how much you eat. And my kids, I did baby-led weaning with both of them. They eat what we eat.
Yeah.
So if they have chicken nuggets, we have chicken nuggets.
So. They get pizza, we get pizza. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
We do that.
Sure.
But we definitely, my husband and I, prior to having children, we lived pretty strictly paleo.
Oh, okay.
And so we've carried that over
Yeah.
into a lot of our parenting. Through pregnancy, I did have to introduce some like rice, some quinoa, some just because, and breastfeeding. I mean, it
needed a lot of
different,
carb,
your
calorie,
body
sugars,
needs,
yeah,
your
all
body
that
needs
stuff.
different stuff for,
Sure.
right? So we do bring some of that into it, but for the most part, it's meats, veggies, fruits, healthy fats, and then some rice, some quinoa, and some beans.
Now, have you seen, because the more I dive into all this nutrition stuff that I'm learning, especially with the kids, I hear a lot of stories, especially with kids eating too much sugar and ADD and ADHD and autism and all this stuff surrounded with nutrition. Do you find that is that part of your coaching at all? Like, you got to take these kids off goldfish because he eats them 24/7 or whatever it is. Do you have to do that at all?
Yeah, it's not my area of expertise.
Yeah.
And I'm I am pretty holistic, so I do like to explore or mention, all the different things. And I work with a lot of really great professionals and collaborate with them and pull them into different client cases when needed. In terms of nutrition, one of my hard rules in our house is no artificial.
Yeah.
There's just an incredible amount of research with artificial colors and food dyes and flavorings from other countries. At Red Dye 40, there is a link. They found a link between Red Dye 40 and hyperactive activity in the brain. So that's one of and it's a carcinogen, and it's in our food, and so that's just something that in our family we don't do. So we switch out the Halloween candy with the non-artificial candy, and if they really want a piece, again, I'm not going to enter into a power struggle over food, because I think that the healthy eating habits are more important. So I'll give it to them. But I have the conversation about that has chemicals that hurt your body in it, and these have not chemicals. And they do know that if they eat too much sugar, you can get a bellyache. So it's good to balance, right?
Sure.
So we do have I think raising that self-awareness in the conversation is important, and not entering into the line of food deprivation. Like, you can't have that. That's off limits.
Right.
But building in that self-awareness that I think is really important, and I think a lot of adults struggle with that.
Oh, it's huge. It's very bad, yeah.
And I'm really grateful that I had the gym experience, the health and wellness, the nutrition background before I had kids, because, my kids get to see me work out every day.
Sure.
They see the eating choices that I make. They see me indulge sometimes. If I want ice cream, I'm going to have ice cream.
Right.
I'm not in a season of deprivation. So that's, I think, again, modeling is really important. We want to model the habits we want our kids to have. Yeah,
I think it's important, especially with the like you're saying, don't get in such of a battle to eat. So, for example, my son, the same thing. He'll eat an ice cream or he'll want a candy bar. Yeah. And at some point, I'll give it to him, but I just tell him it has too much sugar, or it has this processed crap, or, I'll just go through that. And he's so into, like you said, he wants to be so much like me, and I'm into training and running long distance and trying to teach him, just explain to him. And of course, he'll just still eat the whole ice cream, but I find it cute. I could tell it started to work when we had some sour gummies in the pantry, and he's like, "Let's throw those away, Dad. It's too much sugar in there." Aww. So he's starting to get it. Like, he still loves them. He'll still eat them from time to time, but he's grasping the whole thing, and it's cool to see him. I think it's important too. Like you said, a lot of adults struggle with that too. And it's hard. It's definitely hard, but it's good if you can. I recommend that to a lot of the parents, if you can just educate them a little bit, because I feel like that's part of a struggle too. And again, empowering them with the information. Yeah, let them kind of make the decision. Giving them the option of, like, this is what's for dinner. And here's the thing too, is if I know I'm introducing a new food that my kid might not be thrilled about, which at this point in his life he's been introduced to like a lot of stuff. I make sure there's something on the plate that he does like, right? I want to set him up for success. I don't want to set him up for failure. Yeah. And if it's something I know he might not be thrilled with, like last night, we had like taco bowls with cauliflower rice and meat, and cauliflower rice is kind of hit or miss with him sometimes. I made this stuff called awesome sauce, which is like cashews and
seasoning, you know, but we call it awesome sauce. And he ate 3 bowlfuls.
Nice.
But, you know, a 4-year-old eating cauliflower rice, ground beef, romaine lettuce, black olives.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, but so finding ways like that. But I knew I was setting him up for success because I knew he'd eat the ground beef. The kid's a meat eater, like no one's business. I knew he'd eat, there was corn, like Mexican corn in there, which he loves. He likes lettuce. So I knew the cauliflower, but the awesome sauce, you know, so setting him up for success and also not taking it personally when they don't eat it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because as a mom, like if you're the cook, and dad's cook too, but so if you're the cook in the family, it doesn't feel good when people don't eat what you make.
Sure. Yeah. It's like, come on, I just cooked for 6 hours on that.
Especially depending, like, if you're an Enneagram, like what Enneagram type you are.
Yeah,
it can be particularly devastating to, like, the 2s, which I'm not a 2, so.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Yeah. But, I think it's really important to just not enter into that power struggle of clean plate club or take another bite and then I'll give you
I do that still, yeah.
XYZ. It's a hard habit to break.
It is. That was one of the things, like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, doing what your parents did to you. And that was, I think, super common a long time ago is you're not getting up till you clear your plate.
Yes.
But then when I start thinking about that, I'm like, well, he has a cheeseburger on his plate. If he doesn't finish it, that's probably a good thing. So just, okay, you know, if it's like a crap food, then it's, I feel like I'm not going to force you to eat 5 pieces of bread that's on your, you know what I mean? Like, if you don't want it, please. Just...
And that was an interesting dynamic in my household as a child is my mom was forced to eat she was always underweight, like scraggly, skinny. So her dad always like force feed her, not like really, but really push food
just eat
to
this.
her. Yeah. And so she's a nurse. She's an RN now. So my dad would come in and want us to clear our plates. And my mom always said, if they're full, they can be done. And she would say, listen to your body.
Yeah.
And so having that, I mean, what a gift, right, as a child to have that. And I've really passed that. Does your tummy feel full now? You can be done. And then if he's all done or he's messing around in his plate or he's not eating whatever, I'm like, okay, if you're done, you can clear your plate. Like
yeah, that's it. That's good.
They're not going to starve. We live in...
Yeah. They'll be okay.
We live in Jupiter, Florida.
Yeah. They'll make it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I guess the last thing I want to talk about is not only does your profession lead into helping us be better parents and how to communicate with our kids, but I feel like with how the brain works and brain science, it also works with other relationships, like you were saying, with not just husband and wife, friends, but just humans in general. I mean, what are some of the problems you see with like relationship style with like husband and wife of getting along with when the kids are getting into this type of, when you're going in and coaching a kid for whatever reason, do you find that you have to do a little bit of counseling between the husband and wife ever to get into that side?
Yeah. I have to walk a lot of fine lines and I do make referrals.
Okay, yeah.
I'm like, I think this is a little above, this is not my subject area expertise. But where I can unite parents and what I'm really grateful for understanding and studying the family systems when I was in school, because it definitely helps me working within families, is really understanding that moms and dads, they stereotypically, but traditionally, they have different priorities for children. And I work with a lot of parents who are on the cusp of receiving diagnoses for their children. And there is a process, a grieving process that parents go through. It's very profound, and it comes in waves, like any grieving process. But most commonly right now is with an autism diagnosis.
Sure.
And then you get overwhelmed and overloaded with information. And when I talk with parents, moms want their children to be happy. They just want them to be okay and be happy and know they're loved.
Yeah.
Dads want to make sure they're taken care of. They can take care of themselves. And a lot of times it's financial.
Sure.
And both, and what happens is both need to be validated. Be like, he's going to be okay. We're going to help him figure this out. We're going to help him get to a point where he's happy and he has friends. That's what I hear a lot with moms is, I just want him to have a friend.
Yeah.
And dads, it's, well, he needs to listen. He needs to be able to do school because he needs to make a living. And I said, we're going to get him to a point where he can follow directions, because those things are not mutually exclusive. They're actually a very similar skill set.
Right.
If not the same.
Yeah.
you know. So, or the same part of the brain. So I find that very beautiful, and being able to go into a family and just, what are your priorities and what are your priorities, and having a conversation of what are your family's values.
Yeah.
And it's interesting.
A lot of people don't even have any, I bet, right?
No.
They're like, I don't know.
But when you start thinking about that, we do.
Yeah.
We have a family identity. We may have just never reflected on that.
Mm-hmm.
And our family, my husband and I talk about this a lot because it's what I do. But one of our family mottos is teamwork makes the dream work. You know, we're in this together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And our kids see that. What's really remarkable is my mother-in-law commented, she took the boys to this juice bar after school one day. She picked them up. And she goes, Ethan got up and got Eli a napkin and helped him set the table and laid it out. And she goes, it was just so amazing to watch him take care of his little brother. And research shows that children's sibling relationship mirrors the marriage.
Oh, interesting.
So that's really how my husband and I function. Yeah. Is like we tag team all the time. We've always got each other's back. We always, you know, like, did you get this? Oh yeah, I got that. I forgot this. Did you get that? Oh yeah. I mean, we've been together for 16 years. That's just how we work.
Oh, wow,
We're so like, right. So I think that's really important to keep in mind, that if you see kids in sibling relationships going at it, or if you see, check the marriage first.
Yeah.
And it's okay to need outside help, because marriage is hard, and it's ever evolving, and between two people, and then it's ever evolving in the context of ever developing, changing little kids too. Yeah. So it's this constant. It can be a lot.
I think it comes down to what traditionally everybody used to say is communication is key, right? Like, if you don't tell your husband or your wife how you feel or what's going on, or you need help with this, and you let it build up, then it's just not gonna. Just like we were saying, it can relate not only to our kids crying and whining and misbehaving, but if one of your spouses 100%. Is crying and whining, it's like the same thing. You look at it as they're not misbehaving, but they're just trying to express a feeling that they're feeling, and if you backdoor it and figure out why.
And we just, as human beings, we just want to feel seen and understood. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So if nothing else, you know, okay, so my husband doesn't get mad. He just shuts down. You know, like
he's my wife is just give me a day.
Right, and I get mad. Right, and I just start talking. So it's an interesting dynamic. But you know, if I go to him and I just say, hey, so Ironman training is a hot topic in our marriage right now. He wants to train for a full, and he's done 2 halves.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so endurance training, I'm familiar.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'll go to him and I'll just say, hey, you know, I get that this is really important to you. I get it. And if I lead the conversation with that, it's going to go much better. And look, I don't think this is right. As you said, like, it's a whole different dynamic.
Absolutely.
It works with our kids. It works with our spouse. It works at work. It works. I've used it in parent-teacher conferences, you know, whether I'm there as the mom or there as a professional. It works with everybody, because everybody wants to be seen and heard and understood. Yeah. Period. Yeah. And I think if people walk away with nothing else from listening to this, if we could go out in the world and do that, I think we'd see a lot less nastiness in the media. Yeah. You know, I think we would just be a little kinder, a little softer when we go out in public. And I think we could really start to change the whole dynamic of what our little microcosm of the world is. But that's where it starts, right? It starts at home. It starts in our own communities.
Sure. Starts with inside, too, is what I'm learning. You got to fix yourself, or get whatever's going on inside you kind of dialed in before you can do anybody else. You got to kind of lead by example, right?
Yeah. I've done a lot of self-work.
Have you? I was going to ask, is there a certain time before you were a parent, this is when you got into your profession, that you, the kind of a switch went in where you had to do a lot of inner work? For example, for me, it was recovery. I was an alcoholic / drug addict 9 years ago. So that was my crossover to my new paradigm shift of inner work. I had to look inside and see what was going on at that point. Was there anything that you transitioned into, like an experience that had happened where you were like, okay, I gotta do some meditation to see why am I cry myself to sleep or whatever it is, you know.
I think for me, it's been like a slow and steady. So I'm a codependent in recovery.
Oh, okay.
So I come from a family with addiction and that dynamic. And I was a junior in college. I don't remember. A junior in college, and my husband and I we're high school sweethearts, but we went to different colleges. And so he, for some reason, was driving home with me from Gainesville. I went to University of Florida. And as soon as we pulled into our neighborhood, we lived next door to each other in high school. We're super obnoxious and adorable, okay? But as soon as we pulled into our neighborhood, I started getting really angry. My defense system went up because we were getting home. And I had to go in defensive mode to go home, right? And I think we were engaged, so maybe we were seniors in college. And he said, "Don't talk to me like that. Why do you change when we get home?" And that's the first time I ever went to therapy, because I realized that something about my family of origin, was drastically affecting the most important relationship in my life, right? So that's the first time I went to therapy, and it really started me on this journey of being aware of how my upbringing really impacted me, who I am.
Yeah. And that's where it all starts with these journeys, right? You got to go back to the beginning.
Right. And so then from there, being a business owner, being 23 and owning a business in the greatest recession this country's ever seen, trial by fire. We were newlyweds in a different town, like different city where we didn't have any roots. That was heavy, and faith walked us through that. I had to get down on my knees and pray a lot during those 4 years. And then coming home, I was willing to get better in my codependency. I was willing to get better for my son. Yeah. Because I didn't want him to experience what I had experienced growing up. I didn't want to expose him to that.
Sure.
So, meaning interacting with those family members.
Yeah.
So, and being aware enough of I don't think I don't have that addictive personality per se. I think there's a predisposition, but knowing that the behavioral patterns are still the same,
right?
Whether you're the addict or the codependent, right?
Yeah.
So breaking that behavioral pattern it's been really freeing, and it's an ever-evolving process, right? You don't stop.
No, you don't.
So yeah, that was but parenthood really took it up a notch, because I recognized that I'm breaking the cycle.
Yeah.
It's been going on in our family for generations, and this is the one that stops.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So, that's good.
As is yours.
As is mine. Yeah. That's
incredible.
Awesome. Yeah. It's been a journey. Same with me. When my son was born, it's been 4 years now. I had got clean 9 years ago, so 5 years up until then. But then, really, when my son was born, it's like you're saying, it's something like you never experienced before. It kind of just changes your whole outlook on. I never read books before. I never did any of this. Now I'm doing all kinds of stuff. Just more educating myself to be able to pass that along. It's a journey. It's cool.
Kids are our most accurate and least flattering reflections.
Yeah.
They bring out all the junk.
Yeah, they do.
and so it is, but we can either embrace that and use that to better ourselves, or we can deflect it to our child, and they're the problem. Yeah. And there's so much power when we're able to say, "Oh, I need to work on that."
Yeah, that's me. I'm seeing myself in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's great. It's beautiful. And
do you do any kind of meditation, yoga, anything like that? Daily breathing or any?
So I work out. And that's my me time.
Sure.
And that's where I zone out. I joke, I'm like, it was the best preparation for labor. Because if you can, one more rep, one more contraction. It's the same kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And silence is, like I said, I would like to wake up in the morning and I like to write.
That's your meditation then, I'm sure.
I've always been a writer. I've fallen in and out of it, right? Different seasons of our lives bring different things, and I've recently been able to reconnect with it.
Cool.
And writing for me is therapy. So most of the posts that I write it's my processing.
Yeah.
Because I teach this stuff and I love it and I believe in it, and it's in my body. It's in my DNA. But processing it personally is very different.
Right.
And I do, in some posts, I do allude to like my trauma background, or living in a family with addiction, or being the oldest of 4 kids, like that kind of stuff. Because I think more people are able to connect with that than we're even aware of.
Yeah, because I think that's why that's how you can get your message out there more, and what people attract more to is being vulnerable, sharing your experience. Because I didn't realize that until I started sharing my experience with people, and you don't realize, I just feel like I haven't done anything crazy, but to somebody else, they're just like, wow, that's great, or, and you don't even, it's crazy.
It's amazing. I mean, when people share with me, I have a lot of friends in recovery because we all, like, we trauma bond. No, but we share this common experience and this common understanding and this profound sense of like healing. Yeah. And we know what the other side is, and we've lived through rock bottom.
Yeah.
Not as the addict, but my own rock bottom for sure as a codependent, and I think it's really beautiful when you can say, yeah, we did that, and it was really hard, but I'm on the other side, and I'm so much better, and you almost like appreciate that.
Sure.
It's helped shape me.
Yeah, exactly. It's what you needed at that time, I think. Yeah.
And gives me so much compassion. Parents will share things with me, and I'm like, look, I'm not judging this. If you want to hear I've heard worse, I'll tell you that. But like, it's not even a comparison. No, it's just like, let's take the shame out of it.
Right.
Because
I think it just helps having an honest relationship, especially in your profession. It's better just to get it out there, and then I feel like it's just a more intimate connection, and you can do your work at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah, authenticity is super important. Yeah,
I think it helps to bring it back to the kids and having these problems or struggles. I think it does help to get involved into aftercare activities with other parents that are there, because like you were saying, don't talk about your kids, more talk about the experience you're having, because I felt like that helped a lot, getting into like, oh, it's my, he's doing this or he's doing that, I don't think that's normal, but then you talk to 4 other moms, like, oh,
yeah,
I'm just doing the same thing.
They're all doing it.
Yeah.
They're doing it together at school.
Exactly.
God bless their teachers, right?
I know. Yeah, that's where they're at now, getting crazy at school.
I know, but
it's so fun.
But it's so fun, and I think there's a lot of power, like you said, in getting plugged in with other people who are going through it and validate you. Yeah. You're seen and heard and understood. They validate you, and they normalize it. Yeah. Oh, 3-year-olds are wired to be obstinate. They're wired to be oppositional. Yeah. Because they need to know where the boundary is. It's not a bad thing. It's a really important, healthy thing that they're doing, and it should be celebrated. Yeah. Because they're doing it when they're 3. And
it's so funny when I tell my son, like, as he's about to maybe pick up something or grab something, and I'm like, don't do that, because it's gonna, and he'll just like keep doing it as he's watching it, and I'm like, Yeah. but he's testing his limits for sure.
Yeah. And they need to know, because think of like, it's functioning human beings. We need to know where the limits are.
Sure. And sometimes you gotta let them get a little piece of it. Like, okay, you got that, buddy? That bacon grease is hot. You might want to move a little bit.
That's so funny you say that. Not bacon grease, because that scares the sun out of me. But we were making muffins, and I pulled them out of the oven and put them on the counter, and then turned back around to maybe even get the second sheet or something. Like, I literally turned for 2 seconds. And now my Ethan can reach over, and, well, he reached over and he tried to grab a muffin out of the muffin tin. He got 2 pretty, like, good burns on his arm. And, of course, like, burns hurt like a booger, right? Oh, yeah. So we were holding ice on him, and he was really upset, and he hasn't tried to reach the muffin.
Yeah, he's not going to do that again.
And that's not something I would have let him do. Like, I would have stopped him had I seen it, but because... So now when I say you guys can't be in the kitchen when I cook. Yeah. You can be, in your playroom, or you can be in the living room, but the kitchen's not a safe place for you to be. Now he gets it.
Yeah. Now he's at the age, but I'm sure the younger ones still does, because that's the same with my daughter. I'll pull the oven, she's coming like, what is that?
No. Yeah. It's a delicate balance of is this going to send us to the ER?
Yeah.
Just kidding. Sort of. Yeah.
Awesome, Caley. Well, I appreciate your time. Tell everybody where they can find you on social media, because not only do you offer great content on there, but you go into detail on a lot of these strategies where you don't have to necessarily hire you as a coach, but you can actually go to your page and learn a tremendous amount of information. Where can people find you?
That's awesome. I love that. That's my goal.
Yeah.
On Instagram and on Facebook, it's Play with Purpose FL for Florida. And then my website is playwithpurposefl.com. And I do post a ton of content. I don't think this should be secret. I think this should be readily available. And my goal is always to make it like a grab and go. I can directly apply this today, right now with my child. Yeah. So I do a lot of scripts, words to use with your child. And I offer online workshops. So I've had people in the UK and Mexico and Canada join in the workshops.
Cool.
Australia. Just super cool. So online workshops and then Zoom calls, one-on-ones. So
awesome.
It's regardless of the level of support you want, my goal is that you can find it because we are in this together.
Absolutely. We need some help.
Yeah. Not easy, but you're not alone.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Caley. I appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.